Tuesday, June 19th, 1883. Dear Aria, we were riding with Mr. Cross when little Charlie fell. He was inside his wagon one moment, on the ground holding his arm and crying the next. Mr. Cross stopped his team, and we all ran to see how badly Charlie was hurt. His arm is broken, but he stopped crying after Mr. Bullule and Mr. Keel had a splint on it, the one person trained in medicine having gone off to look for silver. I noticed that Mr. Cross had trouble climbing back up onto his wagon. He said his head hurt and his stomach was sour, but that someone near the very front of the train felt even worse, so he wasn't complaining. I told him about the medicine the Irish Brigade had sent over for Mama. He said that potion would cure many ills, but not his stomach. He did not tell us any long stories, which was unusual. Edie said he would tell us a story when he felt better. Sincerely, Antoinetta. Wednesday, the 20th. Dear Aria, several on the train are ill, and we have one broken arm as well, but we still had a few delays and made 12 miles. End. TAV. 9 o'clock. Aunt Marta and Mrs. Grosso had a loud argument tonight, and Nana and Mama went over to help settle matters. While they were talking, Rosaria came over and asked me how to pronounce several words from her book on geography, which I did as best as I could. She said thank you, which is something she never said to me before, and then asked if she could ask me questions about geography when she had them. I said yes, and thought that this journey has certainly changed us all in many ways. From where I am writing this, I can see the Anderson wagon and the shadows of people moving around their fire, but I do not think I will go over. Usually I do and say things without thinking, and get myself into trouble. Now I am thinking and thinking, but not doing anything, and feeling bad anyway. I am not sure which one is worse. End. TAV. Thursday, the 21st. Dear Aria, some of the sick are feeling a little better. Some are worse. 3 of Mr. Bullule's men are ill, and several others in the train besides. The illness seems particularly hard on the few men left. Slow going in the morning, and the train broken too. The lead wagons went a mile ahead of the rest. We could have stayed with the lead. Zephaniah and Redtop have never missed a step. But Mrs. Grosso was having trouble driving, and Mr. Carty thought we should stay together. The Anderson wagon was with the lead group, and I worried all afternoon that it might be days before we catch up with them, which is why I did what I did when I caught up with them later. I marched right over to the Andersons' wagon, determined to have my talk. J.W. said he was exhausted and did not feel well, and he did look all done in. But I said I needed to say something, and he needed to listen. When I asked if he had been staying away from me because he was angry, he said he thought I was the one who was angry, and that I was staying away from him. I was about to say that was silly, when I remembered how that word had made me so upset the last time, and decided not to use it. So I said I was never angry, not enough to stay away from him, and he said he was never that angry either. I said I wanted both him and Mary Margaret to be my friends, and he said that was fine with him. I should have been happy with that, I guess, but I decided I never wanted to feel so bad again, and I told J.W. that he had to promise to talk with me if we ever had a problem, and not go around with bad feelings inside. I wasn't sure what to say after this, and J.W. seemed to be waiting for me to start. So I asked him what he had been doing since the men had gone off. We talked a little after this, but I felt shy, and I think he did too. But at least we talked, and now Mary Margaret will not give me any more disapproving looks. End. TAV. Friday, the 22nd. Dear Aria, woke to discover that Cora Schlichel, a baby 3 months of age, had died in the night of the fever, with her mother severely sick too. Much care was taken with the child's burial, and Mr. Bullule did not even seem restless to be moving. I heard him tell Mr. Keel that another of his men is ill, which makes 4. There was no one to drive Mrs. Schlichel's wagon, so she will have to stay until she is better. Another woman and her husband and their 3 children will stay to take care of her. Mr. Keel did not want to leave them, but Mr. Bullule said it will be 2 or 3 days till we come to good water, so we left 2 wagons and the little grave behind with heavy hearts. End. TAV. 7 o'clock. Mary Margaret visited, and then J.W. I was nervous at first, but everyone was very civil, which is a start, I think. J.W. says Mr. Bullule thinks the sickness is Spanish fever, and that we got it from the cattle herd we met days ago. Aunt Marta blames the Indians. Mr. Carty blames Mr. Labrie and the boy William, while Mamma thinks it's the heat and water. Nana said it was none of those things, and pointed to the black wagon carrying Willie Keel. End. TAV. Saturday, the 23rd. Dear Aria, one of Mr. Beaulieu's men died, and he had not even been sick yesterday. Mr. Keel's sister is very ill, and so is one of Mr. Keel's drivers. The train split up again, with 8 wagons trailing. We were able to keep up, but even Zephaniah and Redtop struggled whenever the land angled up. Their ribs are showing very clearly, as if they were drying up for lack of water. End. TAV. Saturday, June 23rd, 1883. Dear Aria, I have had a queer stomach, maybe from one of Teresa's suppers, but I would never say that to her. For 2 days, and did not feel like writing. My stomach feels a little better today, so I will write. Edie's father is sick, so Edie must care for him while her mother is driving. Mr. Cross is better, but Coyote Cal is not, but I could not visit them. Mamma is worried about the fever, and said I must stay close to our wagon. I did not tell her about my stomach, or she would not have let me out of the wagon at all. I did ride next to Teresa today, and she showed me how to hold the reins and what to say. Zephaniah looked around at me and snorted whenever I gave him a command, and I am not sure I liked the way he snorted. I think he is an animal with too many opinions. Sincerely, Antoinetta. Later Saturday. Went to Mary Margaret's, and everyone was well. When I got back to our wagon, I found J.W. waiting. Mr. Beaulieu is sending someone out after the men with word to meet us at the next water. J.W. is still tired-looking and covered with dust and grime, but he seemed less shy. Mr. Carty said we should lighten the wagons if we want to keep up tomorrow. Mamma did not argue, and took several boxes from the wagon and left them in the grass. All of our things in Uncle Eugenio's wagon were also left, so I can finally say goodbye to my Sunday dresses. End. TAV. Sunday the 24th. Dear Aria, began the day by burying Willie Keel to free up that wagon to carry the sick. There were not many people there, not like when Hildy and Katerina were buried, and Mr. Keel did not talk very much. He apologized to Willie for not being able to keep his promise about bringing him to Opportunity, but said he would try to come back for him soon. We may be leaving you here, but your spirit will travel with us always. Then, in a shaky voice, he led the group in a sweet hymn. Mary Margaret showed me the words in her praise book, and I will copy them down to remember how sad Mr. Keel was. Around the throne of God in heaven, thousands of children stand, children whose sins are all forgiven, a holy, happy band. In flowing robes of spotless white, see every one arrayed, dwelling in everlasting light, and joys that never fade. We left a little after this, and we were such quiet travelers that every so often I could hear Mr. Keel's voice come floating back, singing the hymn over and over again. Water very low, but Mr. Carty says that if we can conserve what we have, we can make it to the next water. Aunt Marta does not look well, and my cousin Rosaria is not feeling well either, but my aunt says she can drive and will keep up. We will see. End. TAV. Monday, the 25th. Dear Aria, we have left behind our wagon and Aunt Marta's. Yesterday, Aunt Marta did not feel well after lunch, but managed to drive her wagon till the train stopped for the night. She grew worse during the night, as did Rosaria. Ernesto also does not feel well, and Mama worries that they all have the fever. Mr. Carty wanted everyone from our street to stay together, but Mama said it was dangerous for the others, especially the children. There was some talk about Netta and I going with them, but we both said no, and that was that. They gave us as much water as they could spare, and Mr. Carty said he would return as soon as they could to get more. Mr. Keel apologized that there was not an extra man to leave behind, and drew a map showing the route they would be following, as well as some of the trails Mr. Beaulieu knew about up ahead. He also told Mama that he would be happy to carry her piano for as long as he could, and Mama said that was very kind. Then the train left. Mary Margaret cried when I told her, and hugged me, and J.W. said he would be back for me, and kissed me, even though Mama and Nana were right there. Our wagons and tents sit on a hill with a far view of the Black Hills, and waves of nothing in between. The last wagon disappeared from sight just before 11 o'clock. The only sign that they ever existed are the wheel tracks through the grass. This is a very big land, and our wagon seemed tiny indeed, sitting in the middle of it. End. TAV. Monday, June 25th, 1883. Dear Aria, Aunt Marta was very sick during the night and suffered much from the bowel complaint. Mamma told us it might be a few days before everyone is better. As the train went past, everyone looked sad and wished us good luck and said they would be waiting for us up ahead. Edie said don't get lost and wave so much, I thought her arm would drop right off. Mr. Cross, who is feeling a little better and can drive himself, said to take care and that he would remember us in his prayers. I told him I could remember him without my prayers, and he laughed out loud. I am going to help Mamma take care of Aunt Marta and Cousin Rosaria so they can get better fast, and I can be with my friends again. Sincerely, Antoinetta. Still Monday. Mamma and Nana are very busy with the sick today. Mamma had me air out the wagon and clean it. Hunted for edible plants in the afternoon, and was foolish enough to get lost. I was very upset and disorganized until I remembered that the Black Hills had been directly behind me when I set out, so I walked directly toward them and soon saw our wagons. Sun was melting hot all day, but the night is chilly. I wonder where Papa and the others are right now, and what Mary Margaret and J.W. are doing. End. TAV. Tuesday, the 26th. Dear Aria, Ernesto was up most of the night in great pain. When I brought in water, he was sweating and restless and did not recognize me. Aunt Marta is much the same as yesterday, but Rosaria seemed better, though very weak, and said I was kind, and that she hoped I would forgive her for being so mean in the past. I said I did, and even held her hand for a while to show that I meant it. I am worried about Mamma. At breakfast, she sat staring at the fire and hardly touched her food. Nana said she will be fine, but I am not so sure. Tomas walked around the camp several times and never seemed bothered by the heat or tall grass. End. TAV. In the afternoon, 2 of the trailing wagons came past. No one got down from their wagons to visit, but they did stop long enough to say that Mrs. Schlichel had died and that many others are sick. After the wagons had gone, I saw Mamma looking in the direction of Rapid City. She was probably thinking of Papa, and I was too. Where is he? End. TAV. 8 o'clock. We are going to Rapid City. Not the wagons, just Nana and me. Ernesto is worse, and Mamma wants us to find Papa and Uncle Eugenio and get them to come back here fast. Nana said she would drag them back by their ears if they said no, and I believe she could. I did not want to go, but Mamma said Nana could not manage the trip herself, and that Netta could not handle General O'Brien or the trail. I am not sure I can either, but Mamma said I could. I would have protested more, but Mamma looked so tired that I said I would do my best. And so we will set out tomorrow at sunrise. End. TAV. Tuesday, June 26th, 1883. Dear Aria, Teresa said I could have you for the night, but that she is taking you with her. I do not think this is fair or wise. You would be much safer here than out there where you could get lost. I thought about hiding you, but I am sure Mamma would take Teresa's part, so I don't think that plan would work. I have ripped pages from the back, however, and they will have to do while you are out traveling. Edie could think of a better plan, but this is the best I can do. There is nothing else to write. Sincerely, Antoinetta. Wednesday. I don't have time to write very much, so I think Netta will forgive me if I don't write the date and so on. We have stopped to rest after traveling most of the morning, me walking and leading General O'Brien with Nana on him, along with our water, a satchel of food, the rifle, a small cooking kettle, and blankets. Felt as if we went downhill for an hour, then up and over one grassy wave after another. We could see the wagon for several hours, with Netta waving and me waving back. Then we went up and over one more incline, and it was gone. It was as if the wagon and everyone had been eaten up by the land. Nana just said we must go before her bones refused to move, so I must end here. Later. We have no watch, so we do not know what time it is. We don't even know how far we've gone. The sun is in the right place, to our right, so I think we're going the way we should. Nana decided to walk after our stop, and when I said the walking would be hard, she said, "I'm an old woman, but don't treat me like one." So I won't. General O'Brien looks happier too. We are still looking for the trail to Rapid Sea. Nana just spotted a rider a mile or so away, and said we should not move or let him see us. So we will sit until he has gone. I took out the rifle and put in bullets just as I had seen Papa do, held it up to my shoulder as if I was going to shoot, but kept my finger clear of the trigger. Nana told me to stop playing and put the rifle down. I am not eager to shoot it, but thought I should hold it once, just to know what it feels like. We are off again. Dusk. We have stopped for the night because Nana is afraid we might miss the trail in the dark and walk miles and miles out of our way. I made a fire of grass and sticks, bits of wood, and piles of dry bones, which might be from a buffalo or a steer, but without the skull it is hard for me to tell which. Nana is trying to toast pieces of bread and worrying that the fire is too big. She is afraid some Indians might see it and come for us. I am worried that coyotes, who are calling to each other right now, might come for a visit, and I want the fire as big as possible to scare them off. My fingers are feeling stiff from the cold, so I'm going to stop writing and roll myself up in my blanket. I hope that Ernesto and Aunt Marta and Cousin Rosaria are better, and that Papa is the one who sees our fire and finds us. End. Thursday. A new day, and the dark shape of the mountains doesn't look any closer than yesterday morning. I found a tiny stream not far from our camp and filled our cask with fresh water. Nana said that on her trip from Italy to New York, clean, cool water was the thing she missed most. She took a long drink and pronounced it as sweet as baby Tomas's smile. We are off. Later. Not 100 long steps from our camp was the trail. 2 wagon wheel tracks deeply cutting through the thick grass down to bare dirt and running north and south. At least we hope it is the trail. To the north is where Mary Margaret and J.W. are waiting with the rest of those going to Opportunity. To the south is Rapid City and Papa. I hope. We walked along, me in one track, Nana in the other, because it is easier walking there than through the grass growing between them, with General O'Brien trailing behind on the long lead. Found myself thinking some bad things I did not want to think, and won't even write them here. So I said prayers for Ernesto, Aunt Marta, Rosaria, then recited the capitals of the states, the ones I knew, and thought about all the things we have not had to eat since we left New York. Oranges, figs, goat cheese, and crusty dark bread, a thick estrado, with capellini d'Angelo, and meatballs, and sugar-coated almonds. Next, I tried to remember being with Francesca, and how we talked and talked about everything. But I couldn't recall how her voice sounded. I could see her and her smile, and the way that her eyes could sparkle when she was excited, and I could even remember a lot of what she said. But I just couldn't hear her talking. This was almost as upsetting as the bad thoughts I was having, and the only thing I could think to do was sing a song out loud I'd heard one Sunday in camp. Star of peace to wanderers weary, bright the beams that smile on me. Cheer this pilot's vision dreary, far, far at the sea. Star divine, O safely guide me, bring this wanderer home to thee. Sore temptations long have tried me, far, far at sea. I could feel Nana staring at me, but she didn't say anything. I was happy about that, because singing the words over and over made me feel peaceful and helped me ignore the way my feet hurt. End. Noon or so. We have stopped to eat at a spot where another trail runs off the main one at a right angle. It seems to head directly to the Black Hills, but doesn't look well used, and I think we should stay on the main trail, even if it does not seem so direct. Nana worries that the men went on this other trail, but I don't think they would, because I saw the map Mr. Beaulieu gave the men, and it did not have any trails but the main one on it. Nana said we will follow my trail. When did it become my trail? In the afternoon. We have come across a mailbox set up at the side of the trail where another trail shoots off in both directions. I peeked inside, and there was a real letter in it, stamps and all. The letter was going to Mr. Prescott Wayne, San Francisco. Nana did not think it would ever find Mr. Prescott Wayne, but I do, and if I had envelopes and stamps, I would send letters to my friends from here too. Later still. It is very late at night, after 10 I would guess, and Nana is asleep. I can't close my eyes and don't know whether to laugh or cry since I have been doing a little of both all night, and here is why. Late in the afternoon, Nana's feet began to hurt, and General O'Brien suddenly got balky, so we decided that was as good a place as any to stay the night. Nana was off gathering sticks and grass for a fire, and I was unpacking General O'Brien, when two men came riding over a hill and saw us. I didn't even see them approaching. They were just there, right next to Nana in an instant, and I think both Nana and I were surprised and a little scared. They were rough looking, though no rougher looking than Mr. Beaulieu's men, but they had a way of looking at us and our things that bothered me. Nana asked them in Italian what they wanted, but they had no idea what she said, so they asked me if I spoke American. I told them what Nana said, and they both smiled, all the while looking around as if searching for someone. One got off his horse and said, "Seems like you're pretty much alone here, doesn't it?" It was plain that Nana did not like these two, because she told them we were busy and to leave, but they didn't bother with Nana any more. The second man dismounted and told me they were going to the silver fields and could use our mule and our supplies, and they would give me $5 for them. Nana understood enough to say no, and I said no too, and told them we needed our things to get to Rapid City. But the first men said where they were going was more important, and we should take the $5. Nana said no again, and ordered the two to leave, and called them banditti, which annoyed the first man enough that he told Nana to shut up, which Nana did not do. The other man took out a coin, and said they didn't want to talk any more. The deal was settled, and here was the money, but Nana hit his hand and sent the coin sailing into the grass. Both men were yelling at Nana now, and she was between them, turning to scold one and then the other, which is when I took out the rifle and pointed at them. "Leave Nana alone!" I screamed, which got everyone's attention, so I screamed again, "Leave her alone and get out of here!" The first man said I was being silly, while his friend said, "Put that damn rifle down or else." And even Nana wanted to know what I thought I was doing, but I held the rifle as steady as I could and told the men to leave or they would be sorry. "Damned crazy girl," the one who'd lost the $5 yelled. "Give me that thing before you shoot yourself!" And he took a step toward me, which was the wrong thing to do, because it scared me enough that my finger twitched on the trigger. I had pointed the rifle at the men to scare them, and I had forgotten that it was loaded from the day before, so when my finger hit the trigger, I was as surprised as anybody when the rifle went off with a roar and a blast of white smoke. The rifle jumped in my hands and hit me in the chin and knocked me to the ground, but I was alert enough to pick it up and cock it again and level at the man while in a sitting position. "Hold on there, missy," the man said, but he wasn't yelling any more. He took a big step backwards, his eyes real wide. I think the bullet must have sailed close by his head, because he was touching his ear to see if it was still there. Nana's mouth hung open a second. Then she started yelling that good girls don't shoot at people, and that they especially don't shoot their own which would be a terrible sin and put me in hell with all sorts of bad people. The other man looked so mad it was scary, and he started to take a pistol from his holster. "I had enough of this," he shouted, but before he had his gun pointed at me, I pulled the trigger again. This time I held on tighter, and the rifle didn't knock me over when it went off, but just rocked me back a little. I cocked it again and swung the rifle back and forth between the two men. Every time the rifle pointed toward the first man, he ducked a little and took another step back. Meanwhile, the second man, who had dropped his pistol, bent down to pick it up, so I told him to leave it, and when he talked back, I pulled the trigger a third time, this time blasting up a chunk of dirt right near his hand, though I was sure I had aimed it over his head. Nana was still yelling at me. The first man was saying I was too crazy to reason with, and that he and his friend should leave, while his friend called me a string of cuss words that would have impressed any of Mr. Beaulieu's men. But he didn't reach down for his pistol again. Instead, he and his friend retreated to their horses very quickly. The really angry man said he would come back to get me, and I almost pulled the trigger again. But I noticed that as he said this, he turned his horse and was hurrying off, which left me holding the rifle pointed in the general direction of Nana, who was still saying things to me, though not quite as loudly as before. I was glad I was sitting down, because I suddenly felt lightheaded, but I didn't want to be sick as long as those men were in sight. So all I could think to do was yell at Nana to shut up, and she did. Nana scowled at me, then turned back to gathering wood. I took a deep breath and stood up. My legs were wobbly, but I thought I should watch to make sure the men rode off and didn't circle back to get us. It was very quiet after this, and the acrid smell of gun smoke trickled my nose, but I never took my eyes off the men till they were gone from sight. That's when I turned and told Nana I was sorry for pointing the rifle at her and scaring her, but that I didn't know what else to do, and that I didn't mean to yell at her either. I thought she was going to scold me again, but instead she said, "You were like one of Garibaldi's warriors, Teresa. You gave those two bandits what they deserved." That's when she gave me a powerful hug, and I started to laugh and cry at the same time. And then Nana said I should have something to eat and then go to sleep. I wanted to, but I thought about the men, and how one had said he would come back for me. I took a piece of rope and tied the angry man's pistol around my waist. I wanted to have a gun close to me every second. Next, I moved our camp a mile or so away, into a deep gully that would hide General O'Brien and the light from our fire from anyone on the trail. So now I am sitting up almost on top of our tiny fire, the pistol in my lap, writing this and hoping the night will pass quickly. Mr. Anderson had once said that we were pioneers in a great American adventure, but I am not sure he meant an adventure that included fever and drownings and bandits. End. TAV. Friday. We had walked only a little way when we saw the first wagon coming toward us from Rapid City. It wasn't Papa or anyone from the Opportunity train, but a group of men coming from the silver fields. "It's a bust," one of them told me, after I asked if they had seen our people. "Not enough silver to fill a tooth. Your daddy'll be heading home soon enough, missy." Nana and I decided to stay where we were and wait to see if the men came back up the trail. I was so tired I fell asleep, but Nana stayed awake and said that all the morning men, some in little groups, some by themselves, wandered by, every one of them looking up and disgusted. I woke up, and pretty soon along came Mr. Labree's wagon with some of the men from the train, but not Papa or Uncle Eugenio or the others from our street. These men told us that the Black Hills Pioneer had reported the strike as soon as it heard about it, so it would be the first with the news and never bothered to verify it. When the chief assayer got around to examining the claim, he found only copper and some other minerals, but nothing exciting, and certainly nothing worth leaving a family behind for. The men thought our people would be along any time now. They were very upset when I told them about the sickness in the train, and read out the names of the dead and sick from my diary. They left us some food and water, then hurried up the trail. It might have been an hour or two before I spotted Papa, who hugged and kissed me all the time, asking why we were there, and what was the matter, and why I was so dirty, and why did I have a pistol tied around my waist, and a big bruise on my chin. Nana answered for me. "While you were off with your silver, your families are sick with fever. Stop talking and get on your horses." That's what they did. I got up behind Papa, and Uncle Eugenio held General O'Brien's lead while Nana rode him. Then both Nana and I took turns telling them what happened since they left, with Nana saying they were foolish men every so often. None of them argued with her about it. End for now. TAV. Later. Went along all day without stopping. We did halt for a few minutes at the spot where the two men had tried to take General O'Brien and our supplies, while Nana and I went over that story one more time. Late in the afternoon, Papa, Uncle Eugenio, Nana, and I left the trail and headed straight for our wagons, as straight as I could direct them, that is. The other men continued north up the trail toward the rest of the train and their families. Papa was not stopping at all, but all the animals were snorting and exhausted, and I told Papa that there was a day's ride still, and uphill at that. Papa did not want to hear me, and I did not want to argue, especially not in front of Nana and Uncle Eugenio. But I knew I had to do something. We might hurt the animals if we went any further, and then where would we be? So I hopped off Papa's horse and stopped General O'Brien to help Nana off and said, "This is a good spot to stop." Nana must have understood, because she got off and said, "Listen to the girl. She was smart enough to scare away bandits and find you, so she is smart enough to know where to camp." Papa might have argued with me, but not Nana, so we made camp. Nana began preparing supper, while Uncle Eugenio started a fire. That's when Papa told me how they had traveled down past a town called Belle Fourche when they heard the silver strike was all a story. The town was nothing but confusion, men arriving from every direction, stores and saloons overflowing, the sidewalks and streets jammed, and everyone talking and arguing about the same thing. Some of the men decided to continue, just in case this recent news was just a rumor meant to discourage would-be miners. Uncle Eugenio wanted to go on too, but Papa said no and turned around, and the others followed. Papa said he and Eugenio had a very big fight, and that he had missed us so much and worried about us so much that he knew he'd make a mistake in hunting for silver. "I could have told you that before you left," I said, and immediately felt ashamed and sorry that I had said it out loud, but Papa didn't seem to mind. "And your mamma did tell me, but I was too stubborn to listen then, and, well..." He didn't want to say it, but I knew it was something about Uncle Eugenio, and how he always seemed to be led around by him. and I think he knew that I knew, because he said, "But it won't happen in the future, Teresa. Not ever again. This is a land where everyone can start over fresh. Even me." I hugged Papa, and he hugged me, and then Nana said it was time for supper. To bed. End. TAV. Saturday. Papa said we are leaving as soon as he has General O'Brien packed. Uncle Eugenio wants to have something to eat, but Papa said we will eat while riding, so we are all leaving. Now. Just before we set out, Papa picked up the pistol and was looking at it when Uncle Eugenio said that he had always wanted a pistol and would like to have it. Papa did not say anything at first, but instead handed the pistol back to me. Teresa is the one who came by it, so it is hers to give or not mine. Uncle Eugenio asked me for the pistol, and when I hesitated, he said, "What use is a pistol to a girl?" "The same as for a boy," I answered, and tried the string around my waist, and said I wanted to keep it. I wanted Uncle Eugenio to know that out here we are all starting over again. Later. We traveled for several hours this morning before stopping. I think we are going in the right direction, but nothing looks familiar to me. Papa is impatient to go, and so am I, but I told him the animals need more rest or they could get sick. "You are probably right," Papa said, but he is so anxious that he is off now pacing in the dust and grass and kicking at stones. Uncle Eugenio told him he should relax and that everything would be all right, but Papa just keeps going back and forth, back and forth. Still later. Another stop. The horses and mule are thirsty and tired, and Papa is annoyed and wants to get going. Mr. Bulule would smile to see him, I'm sure. Uncle Eugenio told him everyone is fine. Come, sit, relax, and have some bread. But Papa pulled away from him and asked, "How do you know how Marta and Rosario are? Or Ernesto? Or the others? How do you know?" "We have to rest the animals," Uncle Eugenio tried. "Kicking up dust won't help them." Papa walked away, and Uncle Eugenio came back to us shaking his head. "There is no reasoning with him these past days," he said. I wanted to say, "This is only the start," but I stopped myself. It is true, of course, but saying so will not help anyone now. Another stop to water the animals. Came on a stream, which I do not remember at all, but the land is beginning to tilt up more steeply, and that feels familiar. Papa hasn't said very much at all since our last stop, and I am worrying too. Everyone is quiet. Nighttime. We have stopped to eat, but Papa says we are going to continue in the dark. He says we will have a better chance of seeing their fire, and I hope that is true. Just before the sun disappeared, I turned around and thought the black hills and other cliffs and buttes looked like they were all in the same position as when we left, so maybe we are near the wagons. Uncle Eugenio did not argue with Papa, and Nana is hurrying so we can be on our way. I am going to say a prayer that Papa is right.